Um,
Well, great to have the opportunity to talk to you today. First of all, before we get started about your career and the movie and everything, how are you holding up? It's been a year, hasn't it?
it's been a year. Yeah, I think for all of us, I was talking to someone yesterday. She just came back to LA. And I remembered, that's right, we also went through 10, maybe 12 consecutive days where we couldn't see the sky because it
Yeah.
was orange with the fires.
Yes.
And then I thought, Kobe Bryant died in January of last year and was a shock just because he's young and such a member of the community out here. And
Yeah.
that was just a precursor, you know. And then I had COVID in early March.
I heard that. And you're okay now? Everything's all right?
Yeah, there were some lingering side effects for a little bit and a really high level of anxiety, I have
Yeah,
to say.
I would
But
say.
yeah, but afterwards it got a little bit better. I've had my first dose of the vaccine. My second dose is a week from tomorrow. I'm very excited.
Yay, amazing. You
Yeah,
guys are
yeah.
a little bit more ahead of us here in Canada. We are chomping at the bit to get these vaccines. So I just took my 83-year-old mother. Thank God she got her first one at least. So
Awesome.
they're going in stages of age. So
Same here. And then they
yeah,
opened it up to certain professions because as well as the acting, I teach acting. I run my own acting school.
right.
So teachers were approved for the vaccine. I mean, look, you guys also have done a tremendously better job of handling this pandemic than we have.
Up until this point, though.
Yeah.
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 So it made me think about that, Josh, because I was thinking about that in the beginning, how great we were doing, and what was going on in the States politically and all that, and that was a major reason for why you guys had what you had. And then it turned around, and now we're but I just literally saw on my phone that the US is giving Canada 1.5 million doses of the vaccine. So God love Biden. Oh, that's all I have to say.
Listen, you and I align completely here. I mean, no, there are certain places that I always knew were sort of like so tightly allied. And I've worked in Canada a few times, and
Yes.
Canada, England, Australia, there are countries. And the last 4 years, I felt like I watched every one of those connections crumble under the hands of this lunatic. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, let's just hope it keeps moving forward for all of us, and we'll get to be able to cross our borders soon and everything. But let's get started. So, the Tangle. First of all, I got to ask you because this is like, whoa, crazy sci-fi. Like, oh my goodness! And I wanted to know first off, what was your initial reaction to this material?
well, it's really interesting because Christopher Soren Kelly, who wrote, directed, and starred opposite us in the film,
Yeah.
is a dear friend. We actually met when he was a student of mine in my acting class, and I
Wow.
and he was one of those people who we're contemporaries. I didn't think he really needed an acting class, but he's sort of like a forever student of everything,
Mm-hmm.
and smarter than most people. And so we had a bond and a connection for sure.
Yeah.
We had done I'd done one of his shorts that won a number of festivals called Chaucer, and so I was familiar with the fact that Chris writes poetry and
Right.
his scripts are poetry. But this was deep. This to me was a play, you know? It was a play, it was a sci-fi film set in like a 40s noir setting,
Yes.
and I found it wildly, wildly interesting, terrifying as an actor because it was so challenging.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to guest star in a lot of TV shows and stuff, and have had some really, really remarkable parts to play in
Mm-hmm.
those. But you understand them sort of at first glance for the most part, and the work is getting emotionally connected and being prepared and all that.
Right.
This to me, there were days on set where I would turn to Chris and I would say, I'm going to need you to help break this down for me. I'm going to need you to tell me what I'm doing.
Interesting, because you're the teacher, right?
But
Very interesting.
I needed the mind of the writer. I needed
Yeah.
to know sometimes, I mean, I recite Coleridge's poem in this thing,
Yeah.
the Xanadu poem, and and making sure that that was an active kind of part of the story
Right.
was challenging. Once it unlocked, what was really interesting, because we shot a lot in a small period of time. Once it unlocked, there was a rhythm to it that I started realizing I could just kind of ride the wave of. That the dialogue kind of told a story
Yeah.
internally for me as an actor that let me eventually get out of my own way. But it was my initial response was, "This is amazing," and holy Jesus, how do we do this?
Right. And how cathartic was it for you to shave your head?
I'll tell you something very funny about that. So it was terrifying
Yeah. Is
and
it really
exciting.
terrifying? I guess it would be. Like, I would freak out if I had shaved this off. Yeah, I guess.
I mean, look, I was an athlete and I've always had like mainly close cropped hair,
Yeah.
but there's a, I mean, people look at you different. You
Really?
have a beard like this and a shaved head, and
Yeah.
people look at you different. The
Interesting.
world views you as like, are you a biker? Are you, especially as a guy complected as I am, are you a racist? Like, there's a people found me aggressive.
Got it.
Okay.
Wow.
What
Interesting.
made it fun was that Nicole Da Silva,
Yeah.
um, who is this, brilliant Aussie actor and dear friend, like, so we're so close. She's so playful and she played such a badass in this film. We would get to set and every day we would have to touch up my head. I'd have to reshave it because of stubble. And Nicole would go, "Oh, mate, I'm gonna do it." And she would put shaving cream on my head and she would
Nice.
literally shave my head
Yeah.
before every day of shooting.
Wow.
And yeah, there's videos of us like, on set doing that. And so it became part of the ritual. It sort of, and the character, to be honest, had hair. And when they took him in, he woke up and his head was shaved.
Right.
So the kind of initial shock that I had of, oh my God, look at my face without the thing, uh, kind
Yeah.
of kind of played in the film when we like that first day that I had it. There's a little bit of shell shock in me, and luckily, we filmed most of the film in sequence, which we were able to do
Yeah.
because of our mainly one location. So as I became more comfortable with my head shaved, so did Carter.
That's
As a
so
kid.
cool. Now, it's an interesting premise. Like, as you said, it had that film noir feel. That's what I really enjoyed about it. I love those kinds of films. And, but the premise of it, like having this hard drive in your head and, you know, like, ooh, like, would you want to live in a world like this?
Well, what's terrifying to me is that, a couple of years ago, I heard Mark Zuckerberg, that's his name, right?
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Facebook.
Yeah.
I heard him say in an interview that the age of privacy is over.
Right. Well,
Proudly.
yeah.
And, you know, as described in the film, we have the internet. Then now we have the Internet of Things, where our phone speaks to our lights and speaks to our refrigerator, which will, if we wanted to, speak to a supermarket to just deliver stuff. So we're
Exactly.
like, so we're like this close to the Jetsons.
Yeah.
Where, I think Chris's idea is somewhat right on. I mean, we're almost connected in that way. Like this thing in our brain, in our head, that they have in the film, the soul, it's called SOL.
SOL.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a half step from your phone. I mean, the other day, my friend's been staying with me during COVID, and he received a gift, which was a piece of it's a framed piece of sand art. Simple thing. It has
Okay.
a sunset in the back. You turn it this way. It's all these different weights of sand and it pours. It's kind of mesmerizing and it
Yeah.
turns into a beautiful landscape. So I was talking about how that's really cool. And I would love like a big one of those on my wall. And then you could just spin it.
Right.
I opened up my Instagram 6 minutes later and there
Yep.
was an art for a giant round piece of sand art.
Yep.
So it's listening. The only difference with the Tangle is that we're kind of going, well, since it's happening anyway, let's just tap in and go,
Right.
And I'm with you. I find it terrifying,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But
This, Yeah, exactly. No, the same thing happens. I'll be even almost thinking about something and I'll go, did I say that out loud? Because then I'll open up my, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and the ad is there for whatever I was, or God forbid you Google something that you're
Oh,
looking for on Amazon or whatever, and that's it. Like your feed is filled with that kind of stuff.
I've seen things, literal things I've looked at on a website, and then the ad for that website comes up with those three things.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
Like the algorithm itself is unbelievable. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and the idea that to some people, and I think there are people who exist now who think this, where we're tapped in that way, that this would be some kind of utopia. The
Right.
idea that in the Tangle, you can't commit an act of violence because the Tangle will stop you, that you can't starve yourself or kill yourself
Right.
because Tangle will stop you. Some people think is ideal. I think it takes away the greatest thing we have, which is free thought and
Yeah. Yeah.
or perception of it,
For
and
sure.
so I that was another thing that I have to say that I had as a reaction to the script when I first read it. My first thought was, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, this is a terrifying universe.
100%. Yeah, no, it's fun to watch it. I have to say, like everybody did such a great job in it, and so congratulations on that. And I just I want to quickly ask you a little bit about your career too, because as you mentioned earlier, I mean, you have been in a gazillion things, like seriously, like over your career, and it's great because you pop up in this show or this movie, whatever. And I'm looking back, and I'm like, yeah, right, I remember this, and this, and I'm thinking like, man, you've worked with some good people. Like,
Yeah.
wow. And I thinking, who have you maybe learned or gleaned the most off of, that you worked with? Because there's so
That
many,
is
like from Spielberg to Julia Roberts to Tom Hanks to like etc. On and on.
that's a question I've never been asked. And I mean, I can only say it's gonna have to be multi-dimensional in its response.
Well,
Like, you,
sure.
you mentioned Tom Hanks, and one of the greatest phone calls of my entire life, if not the greatest, was my agent calling me after my fifth audition over 5 months for the Pacific, and he called and said, "You are Tom and Steven's first and only choice for this role."
Wow.
And I said, "I'm gonna need you to say that sentence again."
Wait a minute, I need to record this.
100%.
Yeah.
But one of the things
Wow.
about Tom that's so remarkable, because
Yes.
then I got to work with him, in a film, is that uh, Larry Crown, is
Yeah.
that he is delightful. He's kind. He knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
He teaches this kind of idea of he's got to be aware he's Tom Hanks, but he's about as regular and playful as they come.
Oh yeah.
And so when you're on set with him, I remember showing up on set on Larry Crown, and my mom came to set because she happened to be in town from New York. And first I was like, I go, hey, and I'm just gonna say like, hey Tom, and slink away. And he goes, Joshy, and he picks me up. He's like 6'3", and I'm
Yeah.
not, and he's hugging me and puts me down. And then later, my mom, it's Tom Hanks, and I
Yeah.
said, Tom, listen, my mom, and I couldn't even finish sentence. He's like, you
Right.
get her over here. He's like, I love your son, and he takes a picture with my mom. He made
Right.
everybody just feel lighter and brighter all the time. So that
Yeah.
was kind of remarkable. Um, I
Spielberg.
got
It's
Spiel.
Spielberg. Come
I
on.
mean, Spielberg. He, he's he's the smartest guy in the room,
Yeah.
you know, and he holds it, in my experience, quietly. He holds it with grace, like an awareness that, like, I know what I'm doing here,
Right.
but he still has that sensitivity of an artist. So it's like I think I looked at Steven Spielberg and I go like, oh, that's what I want to strive for. I want to have that ability to say like, yes, I'm a professional at this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm great, but not have it fill my ego, not have it make me feel the need to wield it against other people. Um, who is kind of remarkable? Two men I'll say that were remarkable: Mark Harmon and Ted Danson.
Nice
Two.
guys, both nice
Oh,
guys.
oh
Yeah,
my God, are they
yeah,
so kind?
yeah.
And they take care of their crew. I just worked again with Nathan Fillion on The Rookie, and we had
We
worked together.
love Nathan Fillion. He's Canadian. Come on. And I
Nathan
love that
Fillion
show. I love that show, by the
and
way.
Nathan Fillion
Yeah.
is everything you want and hope him to be.
Right. But you did Castle too. So you guys have that
Yes.
history. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. And I came back and he was like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you." And we were chatting, and and like the first words out of his mouth about he asked me how COVID had been,
yeah.
and then he said, my biggest concern was getting us back to work because
Right.
he said,
Right.
the crew needs these jobs to survive. So, they have a really intense system. There's a tiered system of who can talk to you and who can't. But Nathan definitely was more concerned for the crew working
Yeah.
than than anyone else. Like he wanted to make sure they could pay their bills. And he's funny and he's playful. He, when we were working on Castle, those guys, they give each other notes.
Yeah.
No ego. And that
Amazing.
to me was huge too, you know? So, I mean, God, yeah, I mean, I have been lucky. I've worked with some really remarkable people. I mean, I was Eminem's acting coach on the set of 8 Mile.
Did
And
not know that.
I got to watch Curtis Hanson direct.
Wow.
I, yeah, I got to watch, got to watch a group of amazing actors who we're still friends. And I got to watch Eminem and the seeds of his genius because
Amazing.
he's not what people think he is.
Yeah.
I describe Marshall as like, he's a kid in the back of the class who says something funny and everyone laughs and the teacher gets mad. And where society wants him to be like, I'm sorry. He knows if he does it one more time, the kids in the back row will laugh, even if he
Right.
gets in trouble. He's funny. He's kind. He's a devoted father. He worked his tail off, had no diva fits at all, and
Yeah.
was always writing rhymes
Oh, he's
and
a
writing them
genius.
down. He's a
No
genius.
question. Yeah, no question
Yeah.
about that. Wow, that's
Yeah.
really cool, Josh. Like, I mean, yeah, like you talk about you being a teacher, now, and you're everything that you've learned and you're showing your students. But holy mackerel, like you've really had, on set training, to be where you are today, but learn
Yeah.
from the best.
I want to throw out like one or two more names. I'll just do
Yeah,
this
yeah,
quick.
please.
I did a series for CBS All Access called $1, and
Yeah.
Craig Doble was our director. And Craig taught me something about, how would I put this? I guess variation in a character.
Okay.
My character could be like racist and misogynist. He could be just someone who shit talks. He could be someone down the middle. And he basically, I realized as we were halfway through, I was like, oh, he's directing me in all three. We're doing takes where I'm like a jerk. We're doing takes where I'm a funny guy who doesn't understand limits. And then we're doing takes where you can't be sure. And he told me down the road, he said, I'm trying to plot which character arc. Because in the last episode, my young person of color partner who's a rookie, we take down a drug house and I feel great. And I'm like, we're partners. And she's like, you're a racist and a misogynist. And he said, what he realized for the arc, for the audience, was if they fell in love with me or liked me over
Right.
those first 9, that would be a stronger message where they go, oh, God, he's right.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I see a character like that in one lane. And then I work with this director who is like, I think we got options. And so he taught me to always play.
That's so cool. And you had
There's a
a
ton
good
of
cast.
women
That was
in.
a good cast too. You had
Yeah,
good actors in that.
Ashley Atkinson.
Yeah.
Oh, what a gene. Sturgill Simpson, John Carroll Lynch.
Oh God, are you watching Big Sky?
How amazing is John?
Okay, listen, yes, and I'm sorry that he's gone, but well, then it could be flashbacks. Who knows? Like, who knows? You can always bring somebody. But that show,
Yep.
like from the first, it was funny, a very quick story, and but I had an interview set up with Brian Garrity, and I didn't know the show hadn't aired yet, and so I first episode, I think that my interview was set to do the day after the first episode aired, and so I see like he's on Big Sky, and I'm thinking, okay, great, I have something else to talk about. And when I saw that first episode, I was chomping at the bit. I go, please don't cancel the interview. Please don't cancel the interview. He is like another one who's he's so good on that show, but but John Carroll Lynch, like to see him as this character, because we're
Well,
so used to seeing him as a good guy, you know.
he
Holy
can
mackerel, that's
do
a good show.
John can do anything. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But that cast of $1 was filled with, I mean, Allison Estrom was our casting director, spaced out in New York. And Allison, one of those people that when she puts a cast together
yeah,
and you sit opposite that cast, you realize everybody's a baller. Alexa
amazing.
Palladino, I mean, Phil Ettinger, Nat Martello from London. Like it was a collection of people who every day would do something where I would be blown away. And we're all good people. We were
Yeah,
like a big family.
nice.
And that's the thing about John. John Carroll, in my opinion, can do anything.
I was
We
going to ask you that because when you're on so many sets and when you work with so many different people, clearly, you know, you take away friendships from some, and then some you take away family, like people who stay with you. Like, is there anybody that has become so close to you that you're like,
Oh my God. Look, I got to be honest. I'm super blessed. I really am because if I go to $1, uh, I'd say all of them. But in like on a day-to-day or weekly, I'm in contact with Ashley Atkinson all the time. Allison Estrin is a long-standing dear friend.
yeah,
Alexa Palladino, Sturgill Simpson and I. I mean, I met him. I was like, oh, that's my new best friend. Like, and same with Ashley. The Pacific, the guys from the Pacific, we've never stopped being a family.
amazing.
Jacob Hanks, when he would shoot Justified, would live here in my house. And then he would go back to New York. James Badgedale, John Bernthal, John Seda, Josh Hellman, Keith Knobs. I mean, these Claire Vanderboom, Ash Zuckerman, these people are family.
Wow.
And yeah, and it goes beyond the business. It really does. We bonded deeply on that show. We were in Australia together,
Yeah.
and uh, I've been back to Australia twice since. And as soon as I'm allowed, I'm going back again.
Mhm.
Uh, it, it it is when you have those kind of connections, it's pretty magical. It's
Oh,
pretty.
I would think so. I would think so. So you mentioned we're going to see you on The Rookie, so I'm going to look out for you. But what else do you have coming up the pike?
So I started filming in December a small independent film called Heartland Cartel that was written by a guy named Brandon Smith, who was an Army Ranger and a former NFL football player from Oklahoma. And he had seen and heard about the fact that, like in places like Oklahoma, they become travel points for Mexican drug cartels moving drugs through the country.
Hmm.
And so he wanted to tell that story alongside or almost as a backdrop for what PTSD does to men and women who've been in combat. So we shot a little bit of it in December, and now we're set to shoot the rest of it end of April into May in Oklahoma.
Oh, good.
And I'll be fully vaccinated by then, which will be great as well. I think a lot of people, which will make the risk of going there a little bit
Right.
relaxed and stuff like that. And then who knows, that's
Well,
sort of where we live.
I don't worry about you because you just continuously keep entertaining us. So I really appreciate that because I watch a lot of TV and a lot of movies. So I have to say, but I really want to thank you for your time today, Joshua. It was a real pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you. And I'm glad that you're healthy and feeling well. And just keep staying safe. And thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm glad your mom got her first shot. And I hope you get yours soon too.
I hope so too. Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears. Thank you so
Amen.
much.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. Have a good one. Bye bye.